And what was important for me is to stay focused on the goal, stay focused on what I wanted to achieve and why I would want to achieve it. You see, I really believe that if I could get an education and if I could then use my education to contribute to society in meaningful, measurable ways, I truly believe that I would be able to build a stronger support network. And it was that cycle all working together that really helped me to grow. But every time I achieved one little accomplishment, I'd put myself on a pathway to new accomplishment and new opportunities. I'm Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and today we're going to talk about how to get a college degree in prison. If you are interested in this kind of a program where you're going to learn a different mindset of what it takes to come out of prison successfully, a little bit differently from what you see on a lot of other YouTube channels, which really sensationalizes what's going on in prison. I applaud all of those producers that create those shows because clearly they are satisfying a market demand, as is obvious by the number of people who subscribe to those channels, including me. But if you are going into the system, or if you are in the federal prison system or a state prison system, what you really need to be thinking about is how to emerge successfully. And one of the ways that you can do that is by getting a college degree, which is what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Michael Santos, and again, I really do hope that you will subscribe to the program, clicking the button so that you can get new content on what steps a person can take to prepare for success, even if they are in federal prison or in state prison. We really want to thank our sponsors at cbdtv.com for providing us with the resources to produce this content for free. One thing we really like to do is to take it inside of jails and prisons so that we can teach and inspire guys who are inside. But if you want to get a college degree in prison, I am going to tell you some of the strategies that I used when I began serving my sentence. And it really all starts with having that CEO mindset, where you've got to have a strategy of being able to succeed in the manner that is right for you. You've got to develop the tools, tactics, and resources that will help you get there. And then you have to be measuring your progress every single day. That's something I really had to understand when I went into the system back in 1987. I was just 23 years old, and I'd never been locked up before, and I really didn't know what to expect. But the one thing I definitely knew was that I hated being in prison. When I started inside of a high security penitentiary in the southeastern portion of the United States, and I'd gotten there just after there was a major disturbance where people had burned down the buildings and there was no education department. There was really very little emphasis on programming. And so in that area, I really had to understand the mindset of the people with whom I was serving time, but also understand what did I want. That's what's really important for you if you're going into the system, to be thinking about what do you want while you're in there. You've got to be able to reject the mindset of a lot of the people who are serving time, who are trying to influence you on the best way to serve time, which many people will say is to forget about the world outside and to focus on the life inside. You get that messaging all around you, not only from the other people who are serving time, but also from many of the staff members who will have their own conception about what it means to serve time in prison. And they would like to put you in a category of whether you are a convict or whether you are an inmate. But what I would recommend that you do is you think of yourself as just a citizen. Whether you're an American citizen or a citizen of the world, think about who you are, because you may be in this situation right now, but that doesn't define who you are. What defines who you are is how capable you are of being able to craft your way and to engineer the future that you want to build. So you've got to be able to reject that perception of what it means to be in jail or what it means to be in prison, and instead think about what you want. And I absolutely knew what I wanted because I hated being incarcerated so much. Unfortunately, I knew that I was going to be in there for multiple decades. But if I wanted to influence the best possible outcome, I had to be thinking about the people that I would want to meet on the other side of the journey. And I knew that those people would include law-abiding citizens, people that might be able to open employment opportunities for me, people that might have influence on the level of liberty, possibly even people that could influence whether I got out of prison. By putting my mindset by thinking about who those people were and how I could get into their mindset, I could figure out, well, what are they going to expect from me? And what can I do to exceed those expectations? That's what got me motivated to want to get a university degree, because I went into the prison system with a substandard education. But while I was in jail, I began thinking about how I could do it. So I spent time in the library of the jail. Now, educational programs had been cut down at the prison where I was at. It was a high security penitentiary. And they had closed down educational programming, but they still did have a library. And in that library, I ended up finding a book on correspondence courses. By flipping through those books, I began to research, well, which ones would work right for me. There was also, though, a problem of funding. How could I potentially pay for a university degree when I just lost not only my liberty with a 45-year prison sentence, but also all of the money, all of the ill-gotten gains I had obtained from trafficking in cocaine. So I was really starting from scratch, and I had to be figuring things out on how I would do it. But fortunately, back then in 1987, I'd learned about a Pell Grant. Now, the Pell Grant is a funding stream that's provided by the U.S. Congress, and it's given to people who don't have much in the way of financial resources. So primarily it's used for people in the community who might come from an impoverished background. If they don't meet a certain income threshold, they can apply for a Pell Grant, and the Pell Grant would pay a portion of the university programming. So once I found that funding stream, I could go out and start fishing into all of those correspondence, or all those universities that offered correspondence programs. Now, this is before the internet, when there were many more university programs available strictly through correspondence. But I was so grateful when I found the program at Ohio University, because this was completely designed for people who were in prison. They had a program at Ohio University called the Program for the Incarcerated. And when I reached out to them, I told them my situation. I am in prison. I'm beginning a very long sentence. I want to change my life. And that resulted in me learning a little bit more about the program they had for the incarcerated. They sent me a syllabus, which effectively told me what types of courses I would have to complete in order to earn a bachelor's degree. And once I got that information, I really got enthusiastic about being a college student. Because if I was studying toward a university degree, that effectively meant I wasn't only a prisoner. I was certainly serving time, but I would be using that time in a manner that would accelerate my prospects for success upon release. And I truly believe that I would be able to influence these stakeholders that I wanted to meet in the future. So I wrote my letter, I qualified for the Pell Grant, and I was able to get into the school with no funding whatsoever for tuition. Now, I still needed to get funding for books, but by writing letters to different people that I knew, whether it was my sisters, my parents, friends, I was able to get people to help me buy the books that I would need in order to complete the programming. And fortunately, after I got going in the schoolwork, probably in my second year at Ohio University, Mercer University came into the penitentiary, and they began offering courses right there inside of the prison. Now, anybody could qualify to get into the Mercer program, but what I found is that the work that I had been doing previously really accelerated my candidacy for being a student in that program. And so for that period of time, I began studying at both places, both Mercer University and Ohio University, because I was really motivated to get this degree at the soonest possible time. I was also reading a lot of books that would help me understand a little bit more about how I would be able to use a university degree to leverage my way into new opportunities. And one of the people that I read about was an author. His name was Jim Collins, who wrote business books. He was a professor at Stanford, I believe, and he wrote this book called Good to Great. And it was a story about how good companies can become great companies. And in reading that book, I found this analogy about this disc. And one of the things that he told me about building great companies felt very similar to what I was trying to do while I was serving a 45-year sentence. And that was to become not only a prisoner, but somebody who would become great at overcoming struggle. And so this analogy that he used to build a great company, I found to be the same type of message that it takes to become great at anything. So if somebody's going into the system and they want to achieve a goal, figure out how can I become great at something. And so Jim Collins used this analogy of a spinning disc, and he talked about a disc that weighed 5,000 pounds and it was spinning on a spindle. And he said that in order to get that thing spinning, it would be very difficult because you have to push it really hard just to get it moving. But once you started to make progress and it started to get momentum, it would become easier and easier and easier. And that's exactly what I found about getting a college degree. Because I'd worked so hard in the initial stages of getting into Ohio University and then worked so hard in earning credits that would advance my prospects for getting a degree, I found a lot of receptivity at Mercer University when I made the application to go in. But I also had to do a lot of other things because there's not a whole lot of support for people in prison that want to get a university degree. The prisons aren't really built. In fact, many staff members told me they didn't like people in jail or prison getting a university degree for a variety of reasons. And what was important for me is to stay focused on the goal, stay focused on what I wanted to achieve and why I would want to achieve it. You see, I really believe that if I could get an education and if I could then use my education to contribute to society in meaningful, measurable ways, I truly believe that I would be able to build a stronger support network. And it was that cycle all working together that really helped me to grow. But every time I achieved one little accomplishment, I'd put myself on a pathway to new accomplishment and new opportunities. This is something that is a universal principle of life. If you begin making progress toward incremental goals, you put yourself in a pathway for new opportunities and further abundance. So one of the things that I really wanted to do while I was in there is not only get a university degree, but become a skilled communicator. In the previous video, I spoke about the importance of communication because it would be communication that would allow me to transcend the 40-foot walls that surrounded that high security penitentiary and connect with new mentors and new people who could help me. But I needed to develop stronger skills, not only in terms of writing, but also in terms of speaking, because I believe that if I learned to become a more powerful orator, a more powerful speaker, I would be able to craft new opportunities when I came home. And so I reached out to this organization called the Toastmasters, explained what I was trying to accomplish, explained the situation. I'm serving a very long prison sentence. If I don't take initiative and make things happen, I will end up speaking like a person who served a 45-year prison sentence. And that in turn would limit my opportunities upon release. So I asked the Toastmasters organization if they would consider bringing one of these public speaking courses inside of the penitentiary. And when I got receptivity to that idea, because they also had a vested interest in improving better outcomes for people, they said that they would be willing to do it if I could get approval from the penitentiary. Well, now I could take my experience of having focused on education and the credentials that I had earned, take it to the administrative staff, tell them that these volunteers would come in so that we could launch a public speaking group inside of the penitentiary, and got permission from the warden. And as a result, we ended up getting the Toastmasters Club inside of the penitentiary. And because of that, I developed more skills to become more confident as a public speaker. In addition, I would use my university degree to leverage new opportunities like becoming an author for op-ed articles in newspapers. All of this was helping to differentiate myself from 2,000 other people who were serving time inside of that high security federal penitentiary. I would also work to write these quarterly reports. You know, earlier I told you about the importance of developing the CEO mindset. And so that what does a CEO do? They're always communicating to their shareholders, They're always communicating to investors. And as somebody who was serving a very long sentence, I knew that I needed to build people, build a network of support. And so I'd write these quarterly reports documenting how far along I had been coming in my university studies, documenting what I did, how many speeches I gave during the quarter, how hard I worked to develop a skill set in communications. And all of that I would leverage to really build more confidence while I was in prison. I would use it to grow in ways that would allow me to feel as if I wasn't just an individual serving a very long sentence, but rather I was always working towards building something strong, building something positive. It helped me to build credibility, and all of this really aligned with the person that I said that I wanted to become. So if you are going into the jail system, or if you are going into the prison system, I want you to know that none of this is easy. You are going to hear from a number of people who tell you how you should be serving time. In fact, if you Google how to serve time on the YouTube channel, the YouTube program, you're going to get a lot of negative messaging about how people in prison will tell you, the only way to get through this is to have a lot of hate in your stomach, to become, develop your confidence in using a knife. They will tell you about interacting with gangs and so on and so forth like that. But I did 26 years, and because I had a different mindset, even though I served time in prisons of every security level and it was always on the main line, I can tell you that I had a very different experience. And those experiences that I had aligned with how I wanted to emerge from the system. So what I really encourage you to do if you are going into this prison system, begin by thinking about what you want to become. Begin by thinking about how you want to emerge. And if you do that, you will be far better off in figuring out what you want to do. I can see that my PowerPoint is about to run out of batteries here. So I'm going to try and speed this up, which is probably to your interests anyway. But I definitely want to encourage you, think about success. Figure out how you can document your strategy to get there, create tools and tactics, and measure your progress every day. If you're finding challenges in getting a university degree, make sure that you use this really low-tech tool. What's the same one that I used? A piece of paper and a pen, and write letters to every school in the country. Tell them your story. Understand how you got to go into this. Understand that you're going to be rejected many, many times. But if you work as hard as I did, you will find a way. In fact, the country is in a different era right now where they're more supportive and receptive to the challenges of mass incarceration, and more people are willing to help. I hope that you will find the help that I find. And if you want to get more information on the strategies that I use, make sure that you subscribe to our program. Get the free guide that's available in the banner so that you can learn a few more skills that will help you overcome the stigma and the challenge of imprisonment. And if you really want to support the program, I encourage you to support our sponsors at cbdtv.com, because they provide us the resources that we need to continue producing this content that we bring into jails and prisons with hopes of teaching and inspiring more people. This is the pathway to success. This is the pathway that really opened opportunities for me. And all I'm trying to do, and all of our entire team at Prison Professors is trying to do, is to be the change that we want to see in the world. And we hope that you will be a part of it by, first of all, subscribing to the program so that you can get updated regularly when we produce new content, leaving comments below, but also patronizing our sponsors at cbdtv.com. My name is Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and I want to thank you for being a part of our community.